Hello, my name is Gamelihle Sibanda, or just Gama for short. Welcome to the BIGA Solutions channel. I would like to encourage those who haven't watched the launch video to use the link below to check it out. It will explain to you what the channel is all about. I'm looking forward to an amazing journey with all of you. In case you haven't noticed, BIGA is actually an acronym. B referring to biomimicry, or innovation inspired by nature, and the ING means Indigenous Genius, often referred to as indigenous knowledge. The A refers to artificial intelligence, not just any type of artificial intelligence, but ethical artificial intelligence. So you combine biomimicry, indigenous genius, and ethical artificial intelligence, you produce something beyond amazing. We're going to have amazing conversations. And really the intention is not just to pass time, but you're going to be entertained, you're going to learn something, and hopefully you'll apply some of the things you learn here and go on and create your own amazing solution. Today we are going to explore the topic, was my grandmother smarter than a PhD using satellites and artificial intelligence? I know some of you think the answer is obvious, but I invite you to stay until the end of this conversation. In my life, I have had the opportunity to study so many different disciplines, ranging from engineering, business, biomimicry, psychology, marketing, and I've even tried different hobbies, radio acting, television acting, writing scripts, presenting, production. In fact, every 6 months I must discover a new talent. And for this month, I've just launched this channel. So let's discuss how we can compare my grandmother, who is late by the way, with a PhD. But first, to be able to get a proper comparison, we need to compare like with like. You know, often you get people asking which is the fastest organism on this planet, and some people say, it's a cheetah, and some people say, it's the sailfish. I always say it depends where you put them. The context is important. On land, the cheetah is probably the fastest animal, but in water, the sailfish will be faster than the cheetah, obviously. So to be able to compare my grandmother to the PhD, let's find a common denominator. And we're going to actually be using artificial intelligence today. So, as I mentioned, we're trying to get the nexus of biomimicry, indigenous genius, and artificial intelligence. All the three are the things that I'm passionate about. And I've studied all of them. Well, indigenous genius is something that I acquired because I grew up in nature. But as for artificial intelligence and biomimicry, I had to go and learn far and wide. So let me just do some screen sharing so we can actually use some artificial intelligence. I'm going to be using a tool that is accessible to all of you for free. ChatGPT has been the buzz since the launch at the end of November 2022. Unless you have been living under a rock, you probably have heard someone talk about ChatGPT. In fact, it has made its way into the mainstream media now. Even on television, you hear people talk about ChatGPT, online and social media. So let's use it. And I'm gonna type here, I'm going to compare my grandmother and the PhD on their skills in terms of forecasting weather. I'm just going to type here, write a list of parameters used by meteorologists to forecast weather. Let's see what meteorologists use when they're forecasting weather. So there we go. Temperature. The temperature of the air is one of the most fundamental parameters used by meteorologists to forecast weather. Number 2, atmospheric pressure, and they're saying here changes in air pressure can indicate changes in weather. Humidity, the amount of moisture in the air, is an important parameter that can affect weather conditions, particularly precipitation and cloud formation. Number 4, wind speed, and direction. The speed and direction of the wind are important factors that influence weather patterns, including temperature and precipitation. And 5, precipitation. That is the amount and type of precipitation, such as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Number 6, cloud cover. The amount and type of cloud cover can influence temperature, humidity, and precipitation, and are therefore important parameters used in forecasting. Number 7, solar radiation. The amount of solar radiation that reaches the Earth's surface can affect temperature and weather patterns. Ocean currents. Ocean currents can impact weather patterns, particularly in coastal areas. 9, topography. The shape of the Earth's surface can impact weather patterns, particularly in mountainous regions, and is therefore an important parameter used in weather forecasting. And 10, atmospheric composition. The composition of the atmosphere, including the concentration of greenhouse gases, can also influence weather patterns, particularly in the long term. The list goes on and on, but I think these are the top 10 that our artificial intelligence managed to pull out. Let me stop sharing here. So you can see the amount of data that needs to be collected to be able to predict the weather. And it's not just the data that you have, because once you have this data, you need to analyze it. You have to feed it into some algorithms so that you are able to then predict, depending on how sensitive the algorithm is to a particular parameter. Then if that parameter varies, then you get a big, massive change in the weather pattern that will happen in subsequent day or days, or even in the same day. The Ph.D. will need a computer to be able to compute all this data and feed it into the algorithm. And where is the data coming from, actually? In the old days, we used to have a lot of people reading data on the ground. I remember we'd have this cabinet with instruments inside to be able to measure, and someone would go and open it every day, check and write down, and eventually the phone or whatever, the fax. And with modern tools now, there are some people still doing that, but some of them now, you have sensors located in different parts of the world. And even with satellites orbiting up there, and these satellites are able to harvest the data, and then the data is fed into the big computers. This is what is called big data, which then keeps coming continuously, and then it's fed into these supercomputers, and then you're able to then predict the weather. So I'm not pretending that I'm an expert meteorologist. I'm telling you what artificial intelligence has taught me. This ChatGPT, all it does is to look at all the data that it has been trained on, billions of data sets, and if you combine all this, you get something that actually makes sense. As you saw when I asked it to write the key variables. Now, where does my grandmother come into all this? I did mention earlier that I grew up in nature until maybe I was a teenager. That's when I moved to an urban setup. And the funny thing is, my grandmother never went to school. She couldn't write her name. She would be classified as someone who is illiterate. She didn't go to a classroom, but I can tell you she was smart. So let's see how she would predict the weather without using any of these tools that I've spoken about, without analyzing all these 10 parameters that we've been looking at. She would be out walking in the bush, and then she would just touch a leaf and say, "We're going to have drought this year." And you say, "But how do you know?" She says, "Yeah, you see this plant, by now it should have put out some flowers. The fact that it hasn't, it means that we're having a drought this year." Of course, I mean, the answer is not immediate, so you could argue that it was just a guess. But it gets better. Let's say you're walking again outside with my grandmother, and she looks down, she sees these insects that have been hibernating down there maybe for the past month, and they're now coming out. And she says to you, "You see, these insects are coming out. It means we're going to have rains in 2 weeks." And indeed, you have the rains. Or she could pick on something else, another indicator, and tell you that, "I think tomorrow we'll have rain," and you have rain. So what was my grandmother using? She was using Indigenous Genius. She was able to look at the environment around here and analyze the environmental cues and be able to interpret those and be able to tell you, "We're going to have rain in 2 weeks," or "We'll have rain tomorrow." And you have the rain tomorrow. All right, I wanted that to sink in a little bit. So now, we've spoken about artificial intelligence used by the Ph.D. To feed and run the algorithm. We've spoken about my grandmother coming pretty much to the same outcome, but without using any tools. You could argue and say, all right, our weather forecasters can say tomorrow it will probably be 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or tomorrow it's going to be 30 degrees Celsius. Your grandmother couldn't do that. She couldn't actually pin a digit. Yeah, she couldn't. Yeah, I agree. She wouldn't say probability because she didn't know the word probability. She just said, yeah, we're likely to have rain tomorrow, and you have the rain tomorrow. Or we have the rain in 2 weeks because these insects are coming out. Yeah, you have the rain in 2 weeks. So where is the biomimicry in this? So now let me take you to a stage now where you have to apply what I've been talking about. Someone who studied biomimicry, like me, hearing this information, they would sit down with my grandmother and say, can you tell us what exactly are you observing that makes you so confident that we are going to have the rain tomorrow, or we're going to have the rain in 2 weeks, or we're going to have a drought this coming season? And then she would tell them and say, okay, didn't put out flowers by now, but yeah, these insects, when you see them coming out, yeah. And then the biomimicry person would now go deeper and work with conventional scientists even, and assess and understand what is it that triggers those insects to say it's time to come out, the rain is coming. What are they detecting? What is it that is changing down there for them to know? Or if you look at a plant that is not putting out its flowers, and then that indicates drought, what is it that it is sensing? And once you understand that, as someone who practices biomimicry, that knowledge now can be used to create a gadget. Now you no longer need the plant to do that. You need the gadget now that mimics what the plant is doing, or a gadget that mimics what the insects are doing. Having a sensor is one thing. The sensor has to sense something, which means you need that data flow to get into the sensor so that the sensor can then activate your actuators that then will do something. So now the data that goes into this sensor that you've built, for you to understand it and be able to then use predictive analytics to be able to then forecast the world, you need artificial intelligence, which would essentially be your machine learning in this case. And you look at this data, you look at trends and understand the relationships. Is there some correlation amongst various parameters? And then you use predictive analytics to say, if it is like this, if the pressure is like this, the wind is like this, I'm predicting it's going to be like that. That enhances our own systems. Maybe we may not need as massive systems as we're using today. The other day I saw a picture of gadgets that we used 20 years ago. We used a radio, we had the Walkman to play the cassettes, we had a telephone, we had a camera, and today all those things are inside a cell phone. So if you take my grandmother's knowledge, you bring a biomimicry expert to analyze and understand what is happening and mimic that, and you use artificial intelligence to feed in the data for predictive analytics, we might actually be predicting weather using simpler and more elegant solutions. All right, I don't want this video to be too long since it's the first one, but I hope you enjoy it. If you comment and like, I'll be motivated to produce episode 2 much sooner. I'd also appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel so that you can get notified if the next episodes are ready, and hopefully you will be informed, entertained, and you can take away something that you can use to come up with your own innovation. Remember, BIGA Solutions. Go bigger! Go bigger! Go bigger!